Well, I see you made it through the Christmas rush, and you've survived what some call the Christmas hangover. Too much food, too many sweets, too many presents probably, too many gifts. So it is good to be with you as we wrap up 2013. This is really a season of reflecting on the past, isn't it? Like we just get through Christmas, and all of a sudden, like we forget Christmas, and that's why we've let the Christ candle remain lit today to remind us visually that Christ has come. Now, in some traditions, they have the Christ candle at every service. Some traditions, somebody will usher with a candle, a candlestick thing. They will bring the light of Christ into the auditorium or worship center. And as they leave at the end of the service, they walk out with that to remind us that the light of Christ goes out. But for us today, we have the Christ candle lit as a reminder that really Christmas isn't done. You know, the good news didn't end on the 25th when you opened up your gifts, but it continues. But we're now at the end, at least here, the end of the year, the calendar year. And so for many of us, it is just a time to look back and to look forward, a time to think through the oops we've done, and a time to maybe do some planning so we don't have those oops in the future in our lives. So today we're going to be sharing the top 10 mistakes. I know your program says it's Juno's top 10, but it's really not. It's the staff's top 10. I make a lot of mistakes, but I don't make all the mistakes around here. And so we're going to be sharing those. Some of those will be funny. Some may be a little bit more serious. But what it does for us is our mistakes remind us and help us to be humble. Reminds us that we don't have our life all wrapped up in a nice little package. It reminds us that, oops, I don't have it all figured out. And oops, you know what? I probably do need others to help guide me through. And so I'm going to share just a couple key passages that remind us about humility, because I really think New Year's Eve is really a time to be humble, to look back at really God's faithfulness, but at least in our culture of, you know what, where have I made mistakes and what can I do differently? And one of those passages is from 2 Chronicles 7:14. It says, if my people who are called by my name humble themselves, pray, seek my face, and turn from their wicked ways, then I will hear from heaven and will forgive their sins and heal their lands. And you know what? Being humble at times isn't easy. But I think if we mix it up with the reality that, you know what, we all blow it once in a while, don't we? You say the wrong thing. Guys, you know it when she says, how do I look? You're never honest, you know. You don't say, I think you're putting on a little bit of weight there, dear. Or that dress is a little bit tight there, or, you know. You just can't be honest with some things. It's a no-win, some of the stuff. So anyway, so we say some things that we regret and we wish we could pull it back in the minute we say it. So being humble is a way to help us connect with God. And then last week, and as I was preparing this, I thought, last week, that seems so long ago in my mind, I'll be honest. I'm thinking, no, I thought I shared this at the beginning of December, but it was really last week about our purpose in life. He has told you, O mortal, what is good and what does the Lord require of you? But to do justice and to love mercy and to walk humbly with your God. You know, humility is really a part of how God wants us to be. And we're human enough that we often create situations where we are humble. And so we are going to be sharing today some of the equipping team and Chris who manages the office and assists us pastors to make sure we don't have a lot of things to be humble about, but he tries to keep us in line on some things. Some of them are here live, and some of the staff took some time off this week, so we're going to do some video with them. And I thought, maybe that's my mistake. I'm thinking, why am I here? They should be the ones here, and the lead pastor should be gone today. But nonetheless, we're here sharing. And I think as I have listened to their stories and reflected over mine, I trust it'll be a great lesson for all of us on humility. So, Chris, where's Chris at? Chris is going to start us off with his story.
Hello. My name is Chris. I'm the office manager and pastoral assistant here at New Life. So my mistake was in 2010 when I was in college. And it was Thanksgiving break, and my friend Austin from San Diego invited me over down to just go hiking and go surfing and just have a great weekend. And so I was pumped. So I get in my car, I head towards San Diego, and I turn on the music, and I'm just enjoying the ride. I get really into it. And before I know it, I'm at the Mexican border. And I think to myself, how did I get to the Mexican border? I'm trying to get to San Diego. And I think, I don't have my passport either. And I don't want to get stuck in Mexico right now. I'm trying to get to San Diego, not Mexico. And so I drive up. I'm really scared. And I'm just like, officer, I need to turn around. I know this is a freeway, but is there some way I can turn around? I'm not trying to get into Mexico right now. I'm trying to go to San Diego. And he says, well, what are you doing here at the Mexican border? And I said, officer, please, I just want to turn around. Is there any way I can turn around? And so they get a police escort, and they have me cross the Mexican border, and then they have police escort me to some secret police gate. And I go, and I follow him, and then he says, kid, don't ever come back this way again. I said, I got it. No problem. No problem. So, but I think in the same way, there's plenty of signs when you're heading towards Mexico. There's plenty of signs that say Mexico in 5 miles, Mexico in 12 miles. There's plenty of signs. But I was really oblivious to it because I was just living so much in the present, and I was enjoying the music and just not paying attention to any signs. And I think in the same way, God gives us signs that sometimes we ignore because we're so caught up in the present. So that's my mistake.
Great. Oh, yeah, I don't need that thing. Hey, Chris has one more mistake that I'm going to share. Chris made the horrible mistake of sending out a letter to a bunch of people without having it proofed. And whenever I, do things, I am either using my phone, I'm speaking into my phone, I am typing very quickly big picture ideas, and Chris is supposed to make them sound good. Chris is supposed to clean them all up, making sure they are letter perfect. And as the new office manager, he sort of forgot that with one of these notes, and we had to send out a humble pie, I apologize note a few days later saying, oops, forgot to have this proofread. So, yeah, we make mistakes. Tina is here. Oh, that one slide. So whenever you go to the Mexican border, if you see a backup, think of Chris. Because people like Chris probably cause those kind of backups, when you can't get through anything. Now, Tina's here. She shared in the prayer this morning, but she just couldn't bring herself up front to share her mistake. So we have that on a video. So let's all watch and listen to Tina's mistake.
So a few months back, I am swamped, but I've got to leave work. So I decide I'm going to do some multitasking, and as I'm driving, I'm dealing with phone calls. When I get to the gas station, figured, you know what, I'm going to start pumping gas and make sure that I can make a phone call at the same time. So I'm sitting in my car, doing a business call, finished with a conversation, cross it off my list, and proceed to drive off with the pump attached to my car. Not my finest moment. Luckily, not a lot of people around, but I sheepishly had to go up to the gas station attendant and let them know what I had done. They were very gracious. Seen it before. Still hurt my ego quite a bit. What did I learn? I need to slow down. I need to take more time to figure stuff out, not to be in such a rush. That's me.
So if you see a car like this, you can think of Tina. That's not her car, but and I also need to know for insurance purposes. She was not on a New Life call when she did that. She is not supposed to be texting or making phone calls for business in her car. So thank you, Tina, and thank you didn't blow up the pump as you did that. Hey, Ryan is our student director here of the ministries, which goes on with our middle school and high school kids. And I know let me think here, what day? Today's Sunday. On Friday, he's taking a bunch of college kids, and they're going on a retreat. And so he's taking a little R&R, and so we have his video of what he's sharing on his mistake. And he has 2 mistakes, by the way.
Hey everybody, I hope you're doing well. I'm just enjoying the beautiful scenery of Yosemite National Park and thought I'd broadcast in live to you all. Happy holidays. They actually asked me to share 2 mistakes. I'm not sure why the youth pastor got 2, but here we go. The first one I would say is we had a guest youth group come in this summer and do an outreach event, and it was great, and we had a lot of new people come, and a few prayed to receive Christ for the first time, and they were just a powerful group. And they spent the night, and they asked if they could pray in the chapel the next morning, and I said, sure, go ahead. Well, I woke up the next morning to a phone call at 7 a.m. that our summer camp program couldn't do their stuff in the chapel or the kitchen because a guest group was all everywhere. And it wasn't until that point that I realized how important reserving your room and reserving your space and communication really is. I think it's easy for me to assume, oh, it'll be fine, it'll work out, and I really need to make sure that I communicate better. We live in an age where communication is so accessible, from postcards and snail mail to emails and texting and phone calls and posting online and social media. We can find out so much about so many people so fast. And we forget, though, to be intentional with really sharing with other people what's going on up in here. My second mistake, I would say, is more of a big picture mistake. As I'm up here in Yosemite, and you can see the falls here, and down below there it's the valley floor and all the trees and no snow. I really get an ideal glimpse of the big picture, and it makes me think about this year. And I've been such a do, go. And I think we all have in many ways. And I haven't taken enough time to really think and pause and reflect and pray and process by talking with other people what we've been doing and how we've been doing. I've just been doing so much stuff. And so I think this next year I really want to do that. In the Psalms, there's a word Selah. And our best understanding of that word is a pause, a reverence, and a reflection, and just an awe of who God is. And I think in 2014, I want to Selah more. And I want to just take that time to really process and pray and talk about what we're doing, rather than just going and doing so much that I lose track of it all. So God bless you guys. I love you guys. Enjoy your day today.
Jacob, do we have that other take from him? Did we keep that? Okay, why don't you run that one? This is what Ryan's really doing.
So for those of you who actually thought I was in Yosemite, here's just a little glimpse of my office over here. That's my door. Yeah. And I've just sort of used the green paint here as a green screen. So as you can see, it's just green paint. But have a good Sunday.
He's so creative, isn't he? So when he tells me he's here at the office, will I believe him next time? Skype, Juno. It's like, here's my office. Sure, it's your office. But I remember that first mistake. I was at a 7 o'clock meeting, and my phone lit up with text and emails and calls about the consequences of not reserving a room. And I know our rooms look like, ah, it's empty, go ahead and use it, no big deal. Well, you just never know who has signed up for a room. And it was not a pleasant morning, as Ryan learned the hard way, that just because it's vacant at 8 o'clock at night doesn't mean it's not being used at 7 in the morning. And so we had a lot of fun with Ryan on that one. Okay, we have one more video here, and this is of Brenna. So Brenna, let's take a look what Brenna's learned.
Good morning. I'm Brenna Rubio, New Life's Missional Life Director. And when I think about a mistake from this last year, I mean, I'm a parent. I have 2 young kids, so it's not at all hard to think of mistakes. For instance, Israel and I will absolutely never, ever, ever turn on the oven again without checking it first in case one of the kids has decided to put plastic pretend food inside. That was an unpleasant surprise. But really, it was kind of a mistake, kind of just one of those things. You just don't always know everything as a parent. The one that sticks out for me most from this last year was back in the spring. My son then was just 1 year old. And he was sick, and we didn't think it was any big deal. You know, it was a cold. I tend to be pretty low-key about that kind of stuff. Kids get sick. So we just kind of, had him doing his normal thing. He seemed fine. And then all of a sudden he was on the ground and he was having a seizure. And so from there we went to 911, an ambulance ride to the emergency room. As a parent, one of the scariest things I've been through. But from the doctor's perspective, actually it ended up being no big deal. It was just what they call a febrile seizure. So scary as a parent, but when I look back, one of the things that really sticks out to me was community. It was our neighbors. We, over the last couple years that we've lived in this neighborhood, have tried our best to love on them, but in that moment, wow, they stepped up. One neighbor was there that we could just take our daughter, and just moments notice say, hey, please, will you take her? We need to jump in the ambulance. And then later that night, as we came back, so many people were asking us, what was happening, how they could help. And really, we'd just gotten the kids settled after this horrible day. And this neighbor came over with this big platter of freshly grilled hamburgers. We were starving. We were exhausted. It had been such just an emotional roller coaster of a day, and they cared for us like that. It reminds me of the verse that tells us to seek first the welfare of the city. In its welfare, we will find our welfare. We were so blessed by our neighbors. We've tried to minister to them, and yet they were the hands and feet of Jesus to us this year. We're grateful.
For those of you who know Brenna, her little kids are so cute. It's like, how could they throw a plastic food in the oven? Oh, but they did. Bruce, I think you're up to share with us. Not that Bruce ever makes mistakes, but
Well, I sense a little bit of a theme this morning because one of the mistakes I was thinking about and sad about was just about a year ago, a little less, stop and start traffic. The traffic was taking off. I was in my neat little Mini, and I'm in first gear, and I take off, and I'm just getting ready to shift into second gear, and the SUV in front of me kind of drops its nose. So it's kind of making a hard brake. I move to the brake, push on the brake. It wasn't a screeching stop. It wasn't like that, but pushing hard. And then my foot slipped off the brake and hit the gas. And I was at high RPM, and the car all of a sudden just takes off. And I'm, how when things happen to you in that moment, life just slows down. And I'm sitting there going, no, why am I going faster? I should be slowing. Bam! Airbags went off, destroyed my Mini. And so, sometimes you need to slow down and you hit the gas and boom. So that was an earthly mistake that I think also has, as even Ryan and others are saying, some, I think, life lessons that sometimes we need to slow down and yet we go faster, and that creates problems. The other mistake to me is I didn't make it this last year, but I was deeply, deeply reminded of my mistake this last year. In March of this year, my stepmother passed away, and I was speaking at her funeral to family and friends and coworkers. And I was just saying how I was sorry I didn't allow her to love me more. And when I was 5 years old, my parents separated. They divorced when I was 7. My dad got custody of all of us kids, so I don't really have memories of living with my mother. And so my dad didn't remarry till I was 12 years old. So by the time this woman comes into the house, I'm 12 years old, kind of figured out how to do life without a mom. And she is just wanting to be this loving, caring mom. And I didn't know how to handle that. And my mistake was I kept her at arm's distance. I wouldn't let her love me the way she really wanted to. And I robbed her of a blessing and me of a blessing. And I just wonder, how we keep people from loving us, how people perhaps keep us at arm's distance. And I just want to say that's a huge mistake. We can do that to God, we can do that to one another, and we miss out so much. And I was deeply reminded by that mistake. So,
Thank you, Bruce.
and you don't have any other mistakes that you're aware of, correct?
No, but we'll meet next week on your
Okay.
performance review and go over a few. Thank you. All I know is I don't think I'm going to ride with our staff anywhere. One heads into Mexico, and I have ridden with Chris. It is not a good experience. And then Tina, and then Bruce. It's like, I hope everybody pays their insurance. Now, I get to share at the end here the last few mistakes. And maybe they think I'm the biggest mess up, so therefore I get to speak the most. But let me share with you, coming in at mistake number 7 was my yard in Arizona. As many of you know, I enjoy gardening, and I had saved up for 3 years in the envelopes. I had put money aside to rip out what little grass I had. I only had like 750 square feet, and I wanted to put in artificial grass. And so I had saved and got a couple bids. One bid was well under half of the original bid. And so, but it was still more money than I wanted to spend. And I said, no, I think I'm going to wait another year. And he goes, oh, I can do it for the amount I had. I says, no, I'll wait. I know you need to earn a living. I don't need you to go any lower. I'm going to wait. No, let's do it. Half up front, half when the job's done. Started the job. The front yard looked wonderful. And I never had to mow it or trim it. And even at that little yard, that saved. When it's 110, 120 degrees, 15 or 20 minutes out there is huge. And so it was looking good. Paid him half his money. Started in the backyard, and all of a sudden, a few days turned into a few weeks, turned into a few months, turned into dozens and dozens of texts and emails, phone calls. Turns into a very long story short. When I moved to Arizona, take a look at what my backyard still looked like. That was it. He had tore up the grass, put in the foundation, and the day he was supposed to come back, I gave him the rest of the money, and he never showed up. So, lesson learned. I will only pay when the job is done, literally. And okay, so my next one was when I was in Michigan, and I have an older sister who was moving, and I had promised I would help her move. She wanted to save some money, so you've all been there. Everybody loads up the vehicles, the U-Haul. We move. I come back, and the subdivision has the neighborhood garage sale of all neighborhoods. I mean, it seemed like everybody was having a garage sale, and all of a sudden, the 3-lane driveways or roadway turns into one very narrow. So I make it to her home. I pull over to the side to be the nice LA driver that I am now, because I've already started here. And I let this lady do a Y turn, and she passes, and I go to move into the garage, and I hear this horrendous scraping and screeching, and I'm just like, what is that? And my nephew says, Uncle Juno, I think you just hit the car next to you. I go, I'm at a stop sign. There's no car. Well, there was a car. And you know why you can't park within, 20 feet of a stop sign? Because I was stopped. I didn't see this car. I just ripped off that front fender, didn't damage the truck. And so I learned two things. When she says we're exchanging information, because somebody else in my family, who I won't name, had just had a major accident claim. It's like, I'm not putting this against my insurance. So we're exchanging names, and she said, well, what is your name? And I says, Juno Smalley. And she looks at me. She goes, I know you. Well, I'm sure glad she didn't say Dad. No, just joking. Okay, no, that would have happened. For those of you a little slow, you'll get that. Okay. She goes, I know you. And I says, what's your name? And she says, so-and-so. And I go, oh. I said, your husband remodeled our bathroom 40 years ago. And I says, he also put an addition on so-and-so's home. And he put a 2-story on this person's home. And in fact, he's at the church, my home church, and he is redoing the whole worship center. She goes, how did you know that? And I says, I just stay connected. And sure enough, this lady knew me, and I didn't give her the lecture of, lady, you parked in the wrong spot. And I just thought, here's my nephew who's 30, and I'm still trying to be a role model, when I just smashed this car. And it's just like, oh, hold it together, Juno, hold it together. And so I realized the importance of I realized the importance of making sure when you're driving a truck to really look over the side there. But I also realized the importance when the agency says, hey, do you want to pick up the insurance for $9 that'll cover you if you're in an accident? Even if it's one day, pick up the $9 insurance. It'll save you about $2,350 of a lesson. And anyway, so that was my Michigan truck accident. And then number 9 was also in Michigan. We were borrowing a vehicle, and I, filling it back up with gas, getting it clean before I return it, and got the instructions from the clerk on where the car wash was, and okay, it's this way, yes. And so I said, okay, Mackenzie, here's the code. She says to drive in, so we drive in, and she says you'll hit a bump, and then you'll be able to put your code in. She goes, don't worry. So I drive in, hit the bump, and I have no idea where this machine is, this code. But I'm in the middle of this car wash now. And it's just like this. I'm doing what you said, Mackenzie, and we're driving slow, and there's still no machine to put in my code. And all of a sudden, we get all the way through the car wash, and it may have been the guys look at me as I am exiting the entrance to the car wash. He looked at me like I was probably smoking something, but and I am so thankful that it didn't, that somebody wasn't coming the other way. But sure enough, I turned around. There was the machine. We got through. The car got washed. Everybody at dinner had a great laugh. But number 10 is this, and I think I'm going to just do a couple more real quickly here, is that I'm going to put them all in number 10, and I'll call them new life's mistakes. Not that coming to new life was a mistake. Let me be very clear of that. That's not what I'm referring to, but hey, I make mistakes here. And let me say, one of my messages, I believe it was in the summer, was let's go fishing. And I talked about, I'm not a fisherman, I don't like to fish, I had to be real quiet in this boat, I'm not going to put a hook on things, I'm not going to gut things, and I'm sure not going to eat something like this. I'm thinking, who would eat this? But then I realized, you know what? Some of you might. This may be a delicatessen to some people in our congregation, so if I've offended you, I apologize. But if you invite me over for dinner, just serve fish sticks. That will be fine for me. So if I offended you by my comment about who would eat this, I apologize. And for 9 weeks, we talked about the fruit of the Spirit. And love, joy, peace. And we had those big sets, that were leaning up here. Love, joy, peace. And I realized after the first week, it wasn't the right set design. It took way too much effort for our team to staple hundreds of pieces of fabric to this design. And our volunteers and people going out, picking up the material, cutting it. I'm a very practical person. I'm just like, this is too much time, but I didn't want to micromanage. I'll blame Jason. No, it's not my area. Even though I'm lead pastor, it's like they worked on this, and I felt horrible, but I was afraid to pull the trigger and say, let's go to plan B. As the lead guy, excuse me, we're going to plan B. This is not worth your energy, because I really want to respect their time. As volunteers who give freely of their time, I want to be a good steward of that and not let them staple hours every week to create those 9 little things. And if you noticed, the first one was full of material, and as we went along, we had these creative curves, so we didn't have to put so much on there to save our folks time. So I really should have leaned into the leadership a little bit more and says, nope, we're going to cut it. That isn't a good thing for us. It isn't a good thing for you. Another area is I call it my space for God, and it's interesting that Ryan mentioned it, Tina's mentioned it, is that I got out of the habit of a space for God. In Arizona, my backyard, here's part of it, and there's another slide where my backyard really was my quiet time space. It was lovely, and I gardened, and every morning I could go out there real early and just sit and read and write and be silent and connect with God. But since I moved here, my routines have all changed, and I don't have that same space. And that isn't good. That's a mistake. And so I'm already looking at the catalogs over Christmas break, and I'm going to buy a fountain, and I'm going to recreate that space. We know that God isn't controlled by space. Excuse me. That God isn't just here on a Sunday morning, but that He is where we're at. He's in the midst of our pain. He's in the midst of our partying and our joy and our celebrations. He's with us at work. But I think and feel that if I'm not intentional to create space for God, where I can just slow down and listen, then it's not going to happen. And for me, even though I'm an extrovert, that quiet time, not just reading the Word, but just sitting, being there with God, is absolutely key. And so I call it, some other people may call it soul care. Again, it's just time to be still and let God speak. No agenda. Oh, I got to write a message. So what can okay, Lord, what? No, there's no agendas on what can I learn from this to tell other people. It's just how do I slow down the RPMs and listen to God. So really my mistake was, I'm thinking I'm a lead pastor. I can come in here and be quiet. I can be in my office and be quiet. I can find a place. But, that just doesn't work. It's not working. And so I need to create a space where I'm intentional, and that's just my little thing to find time with God. And so I think as everybody else has shared too, some of our patterns of what we've shared about as your leaders, hope you realize, they make some pretty stupid mistakes. But if God can use us, He can use any of you. And also, though, but as your leaders, many of us are saying, no, we need to focus a little bit more. We need to be tuned in a little bit more to maybe what God is saying. We need to be opened up to allow others to minister to us. And so I think that's a great end of the year, New Year's resolution, so to speak, or just something to think about. Because if it's happening to us, folks, my guess is many of you also need to create some space for God. Many of you need to be intentional with your community so when the stuff of life hits the fan, they're there to support you. Many of you, like Bruce had shared, had kept his stepmom at arm's length. And many of us probably need to lower that to both receive the blessing and to be a blessing. In Psalms we read, I have calmed and quieted my soul like a weaned child with its mother. Again, just the importance of calming our pace of life down. So ideally, we wouldn't make as many mistakes. There are so many things we can do here at the church. And I think many of you realize that. There are outstanding, wonderful, God-honoring, life-changing programs and ministries and initiatives that we could actually step into. I think the role of your leadership is to make sure we're at the right place with God so that we can direct us into the right thing. Because otherwise, as even Ryan alluded to, we can get so busy doing that we slip into the horrible place that doing is next to godliness, or busyness is next to godliness, and we forget that God just wants us to be and to be with Him. And as your leaders, as we lean into that, we'll receive discernment and wisdom and a leading from God as to, what do we do here at New Life? It means we can't do everything. That means we're going to do some things and we're going to do them well enough so that, as we have said in our vision and as you have read in the beginning of in the front of your program, that we're going to be seeing a growing number of Christ followers who are creating communities marked by reconciliation, peace, justice, and hope. And that's what we're looking forward to this coming year. So as we conclude the service today, despite our humanness, I trust you will still allow us to lead you. And as we wrap up the message today and we have some response time, we're going to use the screen to help lead us into that response time, and then we'll celebrate by sharing in a couple songs. You're welcome to remain seated during our response time, or if you look in the chair in front of you, you'll see a little program that explains the different stations that you can participate in if God so leads you. So as we wrap up 2013, may this be a time for us to respond with God in our heart and through some action on how we should lean forward into 2014.